everyone? Somebody nodded at me like, yeah. Yeah, okay. All right. I'm just trying to get to know. I think we're actually recording now. Okay, well, 6.2. We are going to be factoring by grouping today. Factoring by grouping is almost a hybrid of what we did last time and what we're doing next time. It's very procedural. So at the beginning, I might show you the first one and you might be like, what the heck, I don't care and I don't get it and I don't know why I need to. It is kind of a critical skill to have moving forward in this unit though. So we will do it a lot today, we'll do it a lot tomorrow, and then again next week on Tuesday. 6.2, 6.3, 6.4 require us to be able to factor by grouping. Ooh, I have one other handout for you later. Okay, so anytime you are given a 4-term polynomial, so 4 little pieces, add, subtract in the middle, your brain should automatically think factor by grouping because again, this whole unit is on factoring. So if there's 4 terms, factoring by grouping, that's what I need you to do. Here's how you do it. If you could just watch for the first one and then copy it all down and then go through, because you know sometimes you write down, you look up, and I've moved on and you don't see what I'm doing and it's confusing. The steps to factor by grouping are right here. Here's basically what you do. When you see 4 terms, you start by grouping the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. Now that minus needs to be part of the last 2 terms. Don't get confused. You have not changed this into some massive multiplication problem. There still is kind of a hidden plus sign in between those two. But we're grouping the first 2 terms, we're grouping the last 2 terms. Then, looking at the first 2 terms, you look for the greatest common factor. So between 4x squared and 20x, what's the GCF? And x, is that okay? 4x? We're going to take the 4x out. So the 4 comes out, the x comes out. From the first term, what are we left with? X plus 20 divided by 4, 5. You know what? Hold on, I can do this. There we go. Plus, look at the next group. Between the 3xy and the 15y, they both have a, not just a 3, a what? A negative 3. Anytime this term right here is negative, you need to make sure you take out the negative. And they both have with the variables at least how many y's? Good. From the first term, I took out the negative 3. I took out the y. What's left? An x. Good. On this one, I took out the minus, so I'm left with a plus 5. Very good. So first step, group the first 2, group the last 2. Second step, look at the first group, take out the GCF. Look at the second group, take out the GCF. If you have not copied this down yet, because I told you just to watch, however, it looks like a lot of you have copied it down. But if you haven't, go ahead and catch up. What we have here is we have 1 term right here and 1 term right here. This now, it kind of looks funny, but this now has become a 2-term polynomial Hayden book. In each of those terms, do you see that they both have this x plus 5? We can't cancel it out, but this x plus 5 becomes the greatest common factor of this new binomial. So we're going to take out the greatest common factor. This time the greatest common factor is a binomial itself. We're taking that out front, which means it's no longer here and it's no longer here. What's left over? The 4x and the minus 3y. You don't need the plus. This is factored. Our goal for factoring is to take something that has 4 terms and break it up into a multiplication. Because if I were to undo this guy right here, what would we do? You don't have to write this part down. But if I were to undo it, we would say it's the opposite of the multiplication, right? Minus 3xy plus 20x minus 15y. Is that the same thing as our original problem? Maybe in a different order, but is it the same thing? Yes. Our goal is to go backwards. Last unit, we did a lot of multiplication. This unit, we're going to take the long thing that's been multiplied out and put it back to the multiplication problem. It's the reverse. Okay, let's do it again. Very procedural. What do you do first, second, third, fourth? So first we do what? Step 1. What does it say? Yes. We're going to group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. This is all we're doing today. Then what? Looking at the first 2 terms, what do they have in common? They both have a 3 and they both have x squared. Good. So we're going to take out the GCF. What are we left with? The 3 comes out. The x, oh, sorry, raise your hand. If you're paying attention right now, give yourself 2 points. I guess you don't have to raise your hand, but I totally forgot about the points thing. I want to change it. Okay, so what goes right here? Raise your hand if you know. What goes right there? Mercedes. Good. X minus 2. Mercedes, give yourself 2 points. Everyone else that knew that, give yourself 1. On the next group, we take out the GCF. Between those 2, raise your hand if you know what the GCF is. Rachel? Yes, 15. Rachel, give yourself 2. Everybody else that had their hand in the air, go ahead and give yourself 1 if you knew that. What are we left with? 15 comes out. We're left with x minus 2 again. Notice, again, those 2 are the same. They always will be the same. If they're not the same and you're asked to factor this, then you've made some mistake before now. They always will be the same. And these 2 will always be the greatest common factor. So now between those 2 binomials, they each have an x minus 2. So what do we do with it? Take it out front. Good. Thank you for raising your hand, Hayden. Go ahead and give yourself 2. Everyone else give yourself 1 that knew that. You can have 2 points. Thanks for raising your hand. What's left over? Raise your hand if you know. Olivia.
X minus 2 like that's
Mm-hmm.
and then 3x squared.
Good. There it is. So we can do all of these problems in 3 steps, and the steps are the same every single time. You start by grouping the first and second. You take out the GCF, you pull it out front, circle it, you're done. Will you please try part C on your own? Get as far as you can. Group the first and second. If you know nothing else, group those. This one's a little bit different. It's okay if you don't fully understand this one. It's just a hair different. It's worth trying though. From the first group, what did they have in common? Raise your hand if you know. Cortland? Good. 4x squared. Cortland, 2 points. Everyone else that had their hand in the air, 1. If you knew that. That's kind of if you knew that. If you had that like in your head, that's kind of a qualifier. I don't want to say that every time. Is that okay? All right, what's left over? The 4 comes out. The x squared comes out. Everybody at the same time. What's left? Thank you. What about this next one, though? Point. Good job. What about this next one? What do you notice? Braden? Yeah, there's nothing that they have in common, right? So in this case, the greatest common factor is 1. You need to put the 1 there. Let me emphasize. The 1 helps you later on. If you don't put the 1 there, you're more likely to make a mistake later. What are we left with in this one? X plus 2 again. Good. Do you see, again, that those two are the same. They have to be. If they're not the same, this doesn't work. So take out the x plus 2. And what are we left with? 4x squared. Without the 1, you might be tempted to just say 4x squared. It's not just 4x squared, though. It's 4x squared plus 1. Did anybody get there all on their own? Fantastic. Point, point, point. Good job. Good job. Let's try. Let me look at what today. Is it only 3 more and we're done? Fantastic. We have 3 more, and then the rest of the time is yours. Try part D. Start by grouping the first, grouping the last. From the first group, what do they have in common? 3y, good. We're left with an x minus 7, very good. Right here, what do they have in common? A 5, we're left with still x minus 7. Again, a good checkpoint, are these the same? Yes. If they're not, you need to start over, something's wrong. Okay, take out the 3y, or just kidding. X minus 7 comes out front, we're left with 3y plus 5. Any questions on how you go through that process? How do you guys feel about it? If I were to give you the one that most people will make a mistake on, unfortunately there's only one. This is the most missed problem on this topic. Because of the one right here. This one right here.
Why do you put the one there? Like, where does it come from?
Usually where it comes from is that there is not a greatest common factor between those two numbers. So I put the 1 there as a placeholder because there isn't anything. If you don't put the 1 there, usually what happens is you forget the 1 here, and then these two lines aren't equivalent. Because if you were to multiply that back through, you don't get all 4 terms. You would only get 2 terms. So the 1 really is just a placeholder, so you don't forget to put the 1 right there. That's all. Okay, I want to change this one. Let's change it to, it's hard to come up with something, okay, 3x cubed plus 3x squared plus x plus 1. Try that one. As I'm walking around, if you have questions, please let me know. I try to hover and see what you're doing, but I'm not like a mind reader. I have no idea if you understand this or if you don't. So again, we changed problem E, 3x cubed plus 3x squared plus x plus 1. I want you to do this one in particular because I want to make sure you've got that one thing when there's not a GCF. There'll be one right there, yep. So it's going to be x plus 1. Because when I take 3x squared, like 3 divided by 3 is 1. So you still have that plus 1 in there. Yeah, it looks good. When I walk around, if I checked off this problem, you're welcome to start your homework. We'll just be done. Let me, probably will come back and do it in front of everyone so that my recording gets it, but if I've checked off your problem, go ahead and start your homework. You're good. You know, I'm going to take your book if you have it out again. Got it? Got it, good. I'm fine. You can raise or you don't have to. Good. Good, start your homework.
Yeah, I have one question. Sorry. I picked up this presentation.
Yeah.
So,
I don't give that many points out. Okay, you're good. Let's see, it looks like you're okay. Is this problem like with the one where you're gonna make sure you catch? There you go. Right here. No, you got it wrong. So, yeah, so if you'll try the one that I have on the board for me, just check out. The reason why you got it wrong right here is because the greatest common factor between those two, there isn't one, so you put a little one right here, as a placeholder. Just the one right center, right after. Yes, which means that's not the square squared, the square squared is the plus one. They both will be binomials in the end.
I got confused. Yeah, because you don't do squat. I tried.
You don't work.
Yeah.
Are you okay with this plus one here? Just make sure you don't make that mistake.
You don't.
You did it, but you did also do it right. Yeah, you're good.
Now the X would come out because it's X.
Did you do this last year?
You should probably not do that.
Sorry, you go first. So I got such a participation.
You're good. You are not very good when you come up.
That's
Hold
what
on,
I'm
hold on,
saying.
wait. There should not be a plus sign right here. It should be a plus sign. So just go ahead and move it out.
Oh, okay. You said real participation.
So right here, there's not a greatest common factor. Okay, there should be a y plus or an x plus 1. You need to get of that 3x squared. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so each of those x have a plus 1. But, oh sorry, did I forget? You're good. You're good. You're good. 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 Your guys is on my I know it's a random spot, but have you seen yours already? Okay. Multiplies 8 adds to -6. They both have to be negative. Both -4, -2. And then you good? Okay, so it's going to be x minus 2. Okay, so they both have an x inside. So let's take the x out. So you're left with x squared.
That still has an X there.
And then minus. Now the other one, I thought that you have to write a 0. You both have a 90. You were. And then you're doing the other 10. Yeah, I did. So see if you can catch up. Okay, really quick, and then I'm going to turn off my recording and cross my fingers that it actually came through. If you didn't get this, there's a couple of you that I was like, oh, you're a little bit off. Cole, give me a second.
I asked him first.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so you group first and second. On each of those, the greatest common factor is what? I know that I've checked you off, so give me like 13 seconds, pay attention, then you can go back to your homework. They each have a what? 3, and then x squared. What are we left with? 3 divided by 3 is 1, x. Now, if you just put the x there, something will be wrong later. You can't just put an x. There is 2 terms right here, so there has to be 2 terms right here. It's an x plus 1. Which is where someone, I can't remember who back in here made their mistake, right? On this one, what's the GCF? There isn't one, so technically GCF would be what? A 1. You're left with x plus 1. When you are finished, this first factor should be a binomial. This second factor should be a binomial. There's your final answer. Now, could you write it in a different order and not change the answer? Are both of those okay? Yes. Both of those are fine because 3 times 7 and 7 times 3 will give you the same number, right? It's the same thing here, it's just uglier numbers. All right, if you paid attention to that and you were not doing your homework, give yourself one last point. The point system is only going to work if you are honest with your points. If you're like, I'm not really paying attention. I want to be able to give you extra credit for participating. I think the class runs better when you participate. I feel like you understand more when you're volunteering answers. So please stay with me on that. In the past, I've given tickets out and it's confusing. So I think I'm just going to have you tally it on your exit slip and then I'll gather those every day. At the end of the quarter, I will put on the extra credit. I probably won't put it on until then. Some of you need extra credit in the homework category. Some of you need extra credit in the test category. So rather than giving you a lot in the homework or a lot in the, like, I'm going to balance it. So it's not going to be a lot. It's not going to raise you from a C to an A, but will it raise you from a C to a C+? If you're borderline, maybe. And all you have to do is what you're supposed to be doing anyway. Make sense, Hayden?
Do you give yourself points for doing